Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode 111. The test of a work of art is, in the end, our affection for it, not our ability to explain why it's good. Stanley Kubrick.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my indie film hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Now, today's show is sponsored by VideoBlocks. Now, VideoBlocks is a subscription-based stock media company that gives you unlimited access to premium stock footage everyone could afford. If you're looking for like extra exterior shots or things that you might want to incorporate into any of your projects, whether that be a narrative, documentary, music videos, commercials, these guys got you covered. They've got unlimited daily downloads from a library of over 115,000 HD video clips, as well as a huge selection of After Effects templates for like opening credits, motion graphics, titles, company logos, as well as motion backgrounds as well. It's pretty amazing. And on average, subscribers pay less than $1 per download in a course of a year. And the content does not get stale. They're constantly adding new content to the library every month. So it keeps it very, very fresh, and you always have something new to look forward to. And everything you download is 100% royalty free. Even if your subscription is canceled, you have unrestricted usage rights for anything you want to do, including personal projects and commercial projects, and you keep whatever you download and maintain the usage rights forever. Now, VideoBlocks is offering The Tribe a yearly subscription for $99. That's $50 off the usual price tag, just for you guys, just for The Tribe. That's less than $10 a month. So to get this deal, just head over to videoblocks.com/hustle. That's videoblocks, VIDEO blocks.com/hustle for this exclusive offer. Don't forget to head over to filmfestivaltips.com to download my free guide, and I'll show you how I was able to get into over 600 international film festivals for either cheap or free. So, guys, today on the show, first of all, I'm really excited to have this guest on the show, Sean Baker, the director of the Sundance darling Tangerine. The man has shot a movie on an iPhone, and that was a big event. He made more noise than I think the winner did at that year's Sundance, which was 2015, and his ability to make a movie look amazing, great story, very energetic. If you guys haven't seen Tangerine, you've got to watch it. And he shot it all on an iPhone, and it was remarkable to watch. And I really dug in deep on how he was able to do it, what he did, all the technical stuff, as well as did he have permits on the shoot, all that kind of stuff, and the story behind the movie, and what happened to him after Sundance, and so on. And it was really an exciting interview to have with Sean. And I wanted to bring him on the show so I can show you guys that, look, it's all about the story. It doesn't really matter if you have the latest Red or the latest Alexa, or whatever the next big, 15K camera is. It's about a story. And it's about using the camera that is properly going to be used to tell that story. And he chose the iPhone. There wasn't a no-budget movie. It wasn't like he just ran out with $5,000 and made a movie. Had a budget, but he decided to shoot with the iPhone because it was the right tool for the right story at that time. And the next movie he's shooting right now, which we'll talk about, is being shot on 35 millimeter. So that's something that as filmmakers we have to understand. We have to choose the right medium and the right camera and the right format for the kind of stories we're trying to tell, like Darren Aronofsky did with Black Swan and The Wrestler, which he shot on Super 16 millimeter. And how Christopher Nolan shoots IMAX on a lot of his movies, because that's the format that he likes to use for his storytelling. So I wanted to bring him on the show to really kind of show you guys what's capable of being done. And Sean is amazing. He gives a lot of great knowledge bombs in this episode. So sit back and enjoy my conversation with Sean Baker. I am very grateful for our next guest. I'd like to introduce Sean Baker to the show. Thank you so much for jumping on the show, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks. I'm a
Yeah.
first of all, man. I'm a huge fan of Tangerine and Greg the Bunny, but we'll get into
Oh, thank you.
we'll get to both of those later. But
Okay.
first of all, I know a lot of people like to say that you were an overnight success, which which is wonderful to say. But you've been actually doing the hustle for about 15 years, if my math is correct, right?
No, it's a little longer
Really,
actually.
almost two
It's
decades.
more like I don't want to give away
Your
exactly
age.
how old I am, but it's over 20 years actually. It's
So
it's yeah, easily over 20 years because I actually shot my first feature four letter words in 96, which is 20 years.
how
And
did
so and yeah,
and what did you shoot on when you shot that movie?
we shot that on 35 millimeter.
What is this? What is this
It
35
was
millimeter you speak of?
yeah, right. Which is such a that it almost makes me cringe. I know you're totally joking,
I
but
completely.
still, yeah,
But there is somebody
No,
out there listening who's
yeah,
like, "What is this 35 he speaks of? Is this a new camera?"
I know, I
It's so
know,
scary.
it is. But no, it was weird because at the time I had purchased the short ends off of 12 Monkeys, the Terry Gilliam film.
Oh, how
And that
cool is
must have
that?
been what, like 2 years prior to that, like 94, I think.
So
So
those were
it actually,
sitting in a
what?
refrigerator. They were sitting on a refrigerator for 2 years.
Yes, but or in my parents' freezer or something. But they were all, it was totally good. We never had one problem. And
Hmm.
2 years later, we shot the film. But then it took me a while. Post production is always a problem for me. Always a problem for me.
Okay.
It's post production either it leads me into some sort of spiral, whether mental, physical, whatever. But basically, that took me over 4 years to figure out the proper way of cutting that film. But I was in my 20s, and time is definitely a different thing in your 20s. It goes by way too fast, and you don't even realize it.
It's a blur.
And it was and it was during those 4 years actually that Greg the Bunny was established and discovered and sort of fell into my lap. So that was happening at the same time. So, but anyway, I know I just rambled, but it's been over 20 years. Yeah. And that overnight success thing I think it's such an incredible rarity if that ever really does happen to somebody. I don't think there's even Tarantino had a film before Reservoir Dogs, like nobody's an overnight success.
I think the only guy that I can say that was an overnight success was Robert Rodriguez. Because he literally just busted out with El Mariachi, and before then he was doing short films on VHS at home. So I think he literally was almost an overnight success. He was 23.
Right,
Can you imagine that, man? 23 and have that kind of pressure and attention, and the whole town chasing you. I mean, how he's survived is beyond me.
Right. No, it's very inspirational. It just shows that it's that hardworking, proactive mentality that's important, and it's what leads to, I think, ultimately exposure. It just, even if you have to just keep on knocking on that door of the industry for 20 years, eventually they listen.
And that's what I preach at Indie Film Hustle all the time. I'm like, guys, it's not a short game here, man. This is a long game.
No. It's literally last man standing. It really is.
It is. You're right.
Is.
You're right.
It's crazy. And so your lifestyle and your quality of living can suck for 25, 30 years until you finally, and a lot of my friends who I went to, high school with are almost retiring, if not already retired. And I feel like my career is just beginning while they have made enough money over the years in banking or whatever to retire. Right. It's really crazy.
Yeah, right. No, it's a brutal. We're scaring the hell out of everybody listening right now.
Yeah.
But so, how did you get into the business, and why did you want to get into the business in the first place?
Oh, it's all the way back to first grade. Quite honestly, I was, I was one of those kids. I was going to be a fireman or, a construction worker. And the next day, my my mother brought me to the local library where they were showing, I think, from what I remember, now, of course, it was first grade, so I'm not sure whether I'm just making some of this up or whether the memory is really there. But I think they were showing 16 millimeter short scenes from the Universal monster films. So I remember sitting through the scene in which the mummy rises and gets stabbed. There was the, Dracula rising for the first time. And then there was, of course, Frankenstein, the burning mill sequence at the end of James Whale's Frankenstein. And that just stuck with me. It just seared right onto my, prefrontal cortex. I was just like prefrontal lobe. I was like, oh my God, that image of just of Boris Karloff looking through that spinning mechanism of the mill. I just remember going home that night and saying, I want to be a filmmaker. And so my parents were, they had the Super 8 equipment around because of family movies, home movies. Then a few years later, VHS kicked in, and I was like one of those kids, like what you mentioned earlier with
Robert
Rodriguez, like making tons of those, like a real and they were, most of them were ripoffs. They were just
of course,
remakes.
That's what you do when you're starting out. You literally copy completely, but then eventually you find your voice.
Right. But there was Space Wars instead of Star Wars. And I think some of them, we didn't even retitle them. We just did Red Dawn. Okay, we're going to make our own Red Dawn, which is an incredible, I
would love to see that. I would love that.
You
should actually post that somewhere, Sean. Seriously, that must be amazing.
It's a time capsule because it shows the way that kids growing up in the 80s, how nuclear war and how the threat of a war with Russia at the time was actually a real thing, and how it was actually in our nightmares. And that was something that it's so, today watching it is such a completely it's mind-blowing to see little 13-year-olds going, commie scum. It's really amazing. It's amazing. But anyway, so throughout my junior high and high school, I did a lot of that. I was living out in New Jersey. My parents live out in New Jersey. So I actually got to go to film courses at School of Visual Arts during my high school years. And then I got into NYU, Tisch. And I spent the 4 years there making some decent films, 16 millimeter. I was proud of a few of them. I actually didn't make a senior film because I was still sort of editing my junior film. Instead of making a senior film, I actually produced somebody else's senior film. And but during that whole time, I was just sort of I think I was being very much influenced by a whole new way of the European and indie cinema, because I did not know much about it going to NYU. Of course, I knew the biggies. I actually was even I was a projectionist and a theater manager in a small little cinema that's now closed in New Jersey, and during the days they showed Disney films, and at night they showed whatever the new foreign film was,
Right.
And so, I got a little taste of that stuff, but it wasn't truly, I don't think it was a focus until I was at NYU and I discovered, the French New Wave, really the French. I mean, of course, I knew about the French New Wave, but I had seen the classics, but I never really it was like diving into Eric Romer and really discovering that stuff, and that opened up the world to and then you had places. I don't know where are you based? I'm in
LA.
You're in LA, okay. In New York, and LA is so great right now in terms of different cinemas retrospectives. Oh, it's so great. It's wonderful.
I just saw Lawrence of Arabia in 70 mil the other day.
Oh, where?
I forgot the damn name of that theater, but it was down the street. And they were showing Vertigo the next week. I was like, I couldn't make it, but they're do that stuff all the time here. I'm from Miami originally, so there was nothing like that down there really. And here, every week, there's something new. A whole Brian De Palma retrospective, and like, oh Jesus.
Yeah, it's great. It's great, and thank God. And now you have all of these, archivists who are, and all these Blu-ray labels who are making sure that the original negatives are being restored and rescanned to 4K. It's great. It's a great time for, making sure that you can see all these old classics in the proper way. But anyway, so in New York was wonderful as well, and it still is. It's changed a lot, but at the time that I was at NYU, you had like Kim's video was like the big thing where you could see almost anything you wanted to see. And then there were, of course, all these retrospective houses, and there was a Cinema Village and Bleecker Street Cinema, and which was at the very end of its run when I came to NYU, but it was still there. And you still had 42nd Street if you wanted to take advantage of that. The last year or two of the Deuce, and then there was Anthology Film Archives, and that's where I discovered I got to see like Rocco and his brothers on 35 millimeter. So that was really like, okay, I'm going to pay attention now to the Italian neorealism. That brought me back to, De Sica, and then I think that by the time I graduated, I was really. And Richard Linklater was out there, and Soderbergh, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to make one of these small personal films, and I happened to be lucky enough to land a job at a small publishing house right out of NYU, and that allowed me to cut my teeth on some of their industrials, and one or two happened to be like a nice commercial, like a slick commercial. So I was able to put money aside, and that's what allowed me to buy that raw stock for 4-letter words, and then that happened, and so that's really the way that it
started up.
That's yeah.
Now you talk about Greg the Bunny. That was such a fun show, man. How did that come to how did that come to being?
Well, we so it was during that time where it was Dan Milano, Spencer Shenoy, and I were just basically waiting for things to happen. It was a few years after NYU, and we didn't know exactly. I had this film that I didn't know how to cut. I wrote it in a nonlinear style. It was supposed to be sort of like a Rashomon sort of mystery train thing going on. But what happened was that it wasn't working. So it was taking me all these years to figure that out. And then we were all doing our odd jobs and our temp work. And I remember one night, it just happened to be that there was this Dan Milano had a little puppet sitting around his apartment in the East Village, and I think it came from like a short film that Chris Bragash actually was who I co-wrote Tangerine with and Starlet with. He was the one who actually. He's like the fourth unofficial member of Greg the Bunny, because he's actually the one who found the bunny puppet back in the day. And so Dan Milano picks this thing up and starts riffing on it with it. And I have this VHS camera, and I just pick up this VHS camera, and we just start documenting him. And he just starts improvising like you wouldn't believe. And we realized, we already knew Dan was like this comic genius, but to see him make a voice, create this voice and just start riffing, we were in awe. And we thought, why don't we put something up on Manhattan Neighborhood Network, which was public access here in Manhattan. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, we did. This is pre-YouTube, this is the way you got exposed back then. You got exposure. And we next thing you know, William Morris was actually watching this stuff at the time. They would watch public access.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, that's how they look for fresh talent, going to film festivals and watching public access, I guess. So
back in the day.
Yeah, so we next thing you know, somehow through Gil Holland, who is a independent film producer who, you look him up. He's done a ton of he's helped bring a ton of movies together over the years. He actually was the one who I think connected us with IFC, the No, not the distributor, the actual channel, the IFC channel. And they asked us to do these Greg the Bunny interstitials, which were basically just us making fun of independent film. I mean, we were parodying independent film. So we're able to do like 5 to 10 minute little parodies. We did a, David Lynch parody. We did a Blue Velvet? Everything you can imagine.
Sure.
I mean, we had even The Godfather somehow wound up on there, even though that wasn't really an independent. But we just we parodied these movies, and then that just started rolling, and a few years later, you had Neil Moritz and bringing it to Hollywood, and we had 1 year in which it was on Fox,
right.
And the year that it was on Fox was both our best and worst year. And best because it got us our fan base, and we were able to, we had Seth Green on the show, Sarah Silverman, Eugene Levy, and it was like the year that just basically said, okay, at least the public knows we exist. I feel as if it was creatively terrible. I mean, it wasn't our vision. But it gave us the opportunity to then continue after Fox. We went back to IFC, this time with even longer parodies, with bigger budgets. And we did that for a nice 2-year run in like 05, 06. And then after that, and then 2010, and Shout Factory actually put out a DVD of both seasons. And then MTV gave us a spinoff in 2010. I guess it was. Wow, 6 years ago. And that was a spinoff with the other character by the name of Warren the Ape. So basically, we had like this thing that kept me afloat and kept us afloat over the years. It was a great way of having fun, practicing with improvisation, comic improvisation, which is something that, because I learned how to do that, I think how to work with my actors that way with Greg the Bunny, it led to the way I work with all of my actors today in these features. And it was a way of paying rent in which we didn't have to get a 9 to 5. It was it was a way of just we weren't getting rich, but it was basically just keeping us afloat, keeping us fresh, and also just allowing us to experiment and to hone our craft,
I mean, seriously, that's that's the filmmaker's dream right there. Like, you're able to do what you love. Sure, you're not living the entourage dream, as I like to call it, but you're making a living. And you're making a living doing what you love to do. You get to play, you get to experiment. I mean, Fincher did it in his way with commercials. So did Bay and all those, and Spike Jonze and those guys. And that's how they made a living. But if you can find a way to make a living creatively, my God, that's like the dream.
Yeah.
And then something will pop.
Exactly. And I feel as if, there were, of course there were those years where I had to resort to, doing between seasons, and I would go and do, industrial type stuff. I would edit. But I always tried to keep in the industry somehow. I didn't want to just go off and do something completely outside, not even related to film and TV at all. I always tried to stay, even if I was editing other people's stuff or shooting stuff. I always tried to stay within the industry, just so that I felt like I was just keeping my practice up,
keeping your skills sharp.
Right.
So how did Tangerine come to light, man? How did you get the idea for Tangerine?
Well, so really quickly, I'll just do this in 30 seconds. After Greg the Bunny came about, I still said I want to make cinema. I co-directed this film called Takeout with Xiqing Zhou, which was a tiny little standard definition, almost like a Dogma 95-ish film here. And it was, and Kino Lorber put it out. And it was like a real neo-realist little slice of life about a undocumented Chinese worker in Manhattan. That led to me saying, I like this realm I'm working in. I like, even there's there's humor still in here, but I'm talking about serious issues here, and I think that's where I want to go. That led to Prince of Broadway. Prince of Broadway got me a little more got me some festival circuit recognition. We got to travel the world with that film. That got released eventually. Lee Daniels helped us get it out there by presenting it, doing a special presentation thing. So now I had Takeout and I had Prince of Broadway. And I think what really helped me there is that those two films got nominated for Spirit Awards, and they sort of competed against one another.
In the same year?
And yes,
that's
which
awesome.
Is what it made it look to the outside that it was like a 1-2 punch thing, but it actually wasn't. Takeout was made a couple of years before. It just took forever for it to get exposure. So to it was released the same year as Prince of Broadway, and I think that together got me, those two films together got me attention. And then at that point, thank God, Ted Hope came on board and helped me find financing for Starlet. And Starlet got released through Music Box, got its nominations and everything like that. And that actually is what led me. Well, no, that was a weird period of time there, because I thought that Starlet was going to open all the doors I needed to have opened, and I was in a place where I was like, oh no, I don't know what's going to happen here, because I couldn't find the money for a bigger budgeted film. And Mark and Jay Duplass told me, hey, if you ever want to make a micro budget film with us, we love Prince of Broadway, and if you can give us like a Prince of Broadway, we would be more than happy to finance it and to find, to co-finance it. And I said, I don't want to do another micro budget. These are too hard. They suck the life out of you. And they're really just, I thought I made too many. I've already made 3. Why do I have to make any more? Or I already have made 4 at that point. Why do I have to make more? But life just
works out that way.
Dictated that I have to make another one, So I remember calling Mark, and I said something like, I guess I'm ready to make another one. I can't believe the budget's going to be like less than like a third of what I did Starlet for, but okay, here we go. And he was like, okay, what's your idea? And I said, the corner of Santa Monica and Highland. And he was like, oh yeah, excellent. All right. Yeah, there you go. Let's do it. And I said, okay, but now I have to start the whole immersion process, because with all of these films, I do a lot of time. I spend a lot of time in the environment that I'm shooting, because I feel it's the only way to do it. So there's that whole immersion thing I have to do, and that takes months. So Chris and I had to go and just start like literally pounding the pavement and going up to people and asking them what they know about the area, and et cetera, et cetera. And eventually we found Maya Taylor and Katana Kiki Rodriguez. Kiki was introduced to us by Maya. And it was just spending time with the both of them and their friends and hearing a ton of different stories. And finally, there was a story that Kiki told us that was semi-based on a real experience, in which, which is the main plot line of Tangerine, in which a transgender sex worker finds out that her boyfriend has been cheating on her, and she's off to find this cisgender woman who is part of the affair. And that was really what just stuck with us in terms of, wow, that is dynamic, and it's also has a lot to say, and there's so much to read into there. So let's do that. And that's really how it came about. As we got closer and closer to production and realized that unless we truly asked people to work for free completely, I would not be able to shoot on anything, any high-end camera. So I can maybe shoot on one of the DSLRs, but everybody was doing that at the time. I wanted it to look different. And then as we got closer and closer, and I realized, wow, if the iPhone has now gotten to the point where it has totally acceptable video quality. And with a few other tools involved, I can really elevate this to a cinematic level. And then that's really where it went. It was like, okay, and then it'll help us also with working with all these first-time actors and some of the non-professionals and people off the street. They won't be intimidated by an iPhone. So
Right.
I remember it was really, that was one of the deciding factors. And I called up Mark and we started talking about this, and Mark was very supportive of it. He was like, yeah, man, do it. Let's do this. And we shot some tests so that we knew it would look good. And Technicolor actually gave us a wonderful favor and allowed us to put it on their big screen over there. So, and when we saw that it was holding up on the big screen, we all were excited and said, yeah, let's move forward with this. And I remember going to Sundance that year thinking we were going to be one of many.
On an iPhone.
Yes.
All right.
And it wasn't. We were like the only one, which was really strange to me. So I'm not saying we were the first film to be shot on an iPhone, but but that year at Sundance, we were the only film on the iPhone. And I think that really just that first screening in the what is it, the Eccles Library?
Yeah. That's a big ass theater. It's insanely how big that thing is.
No, we weren't even in that one because we were in the next section. We weren't in main comp.
Oh, you weren't in main competition.
No, we were in next.
So, okay. So then, but you won Sundance, didn't you?
No,
you didn't win Sundance. I thought you won Sundance.
No.
Oh, you just made the most noise.
We made noise. I guess we made noise.
Yeah. Oh.
But I mean, the next section, looking back now at that year, I'm so happy we were in the next section because,
explain the next section real quick. Explain the next section for me.
It's just another. I guess it's just like a section. The way that Cannes has their main comp, but then has all these other sidebars in a way. I guess it's just considered, a side category that focuses. I guess the way that somebody can look it up, but basically, I think that the way Sundance describes it is that they're focusing on innovation and
up and coming.
Yes, the future of film. Locarno has that section too. They call it the filmmakers of the future or something. So
got it.
A lot of the festivals have these sections, and this was a year in which James White was in competition. I think. What else was in next? Next was really strong that year. So I was really, honored to be a part of that section. And
you had never been in Sundance before?
No. It was weird because we were on their radar. I think what happened was that Starlet was given to them too early. And that's a lesson. By the way, you asked me to think about lessons learned. That's a big lesson. It's extreme. I learned that early on, actually. You really, really have to make sure your film is 100% presentable when you're presenting it for the first time to anybody. I think that I unfortunately gave them Starlet at almost a 2-hour cut. And it was just it was this is way too long. And, they didn't know whether or not this film would be good or not. They had no idea. So, but they did, at least I think I kept on their radar. And then of course, Mark and Jay helped out tremendously,
you think?
Yeah. I mean, they're just their names on the film alone helped get the thing, exposure.
No, sure, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
And then Magnolia, they were the most excited about it at Sundance, and I love Magnolia. They put out wonderful films. They put out my 2 favorite films from the previous year, Force Majeure, and Well, it's not one of my favorite films, but I definitely respect it. Did I just say necromantic? Oh
Yeah.
my God. Nymphomaniac. I'm
Yes,
sorry. Nymphomaniac.
Yes, Laura.
And
Yeah.
I'm Lars von Trier is one of my favorite directors of all time.
Yes,
So the very
Dogma.
fact that I'm on the same from my film is being put out by the same distributor as his stuff meant everything in the world. So we were very excited about Magnolia, and they said that they would give us a theatrical run.
Yeah,
which was very important to me because with all of my films, except for my first, I've had a theatrical run, and I want this to continue. You know, even though I know we're really getting close to cinema in the theaters dying, I feel as if there's still, yeah, exactly.
Magic.
So,
there's definitely magic there. Now, can you explain a little bit about the tech that you used when shooting Tangerine?
It's not complicated in any way, shape, or form. It was literally the iPhone 5S at the time, right? Shooting 1080 with an app called Filmic Pro, which is a great app. Now it's advanced along with the phone, so you can shoot 4K, log on your new 7 if you want. But at the time, we were shooting 5S with Filmic Pro. They had this wonderful feature. They have this wonderful feature on there in which you can actually change the compression quality. So you can up the quality of the compression. So it's actually it looks better than the video you would normally get from just going into camera mode on your phone. So anyway, so there's that app that we used. Then we used an anamorphic adapter, not a lens, because you have to use the iPhone lens when you're using an iPhone, but it's an adapter that fits over the lens and allowed us to shoot in true scope. So we were shooting 2.35. We stretched it out in post. Filmic Pro allowed us to shoot at 24 frames a second. And we colored it I cut on Final Cut, and then we colored in Resolve. So basically, it was a very simple process. It wasn't as, quote unquote, pimped out as everybody likes to think it was. It was very, very simple.
Yeah, no, I actually did some research on how you did it because I was very curious when I saw the movie. I'm a colorist. I've been a colorist for over 20 years as well. And, I was really curious when I saw it. I was like, wow, it looks really good. And it's a very unique look. It's not something that you would get from other digital formats. So I was really curious on how you did it. So I did a lot of research on how you put the whole thing together. And everyone thinks it's like, oh, it's like, you spent, $5,000 pimping. I'm like, no. It was a few things, like you just said.
Yes. Yes.
But I also, and I love, and this is one thing a lot of filmmakers, since we talked to a lot of filmmakers, they're like, oh, you should, the Tangerine was just shot on an iPhone. I'm like, yes, Tangerine was just shot on an iPhone, but Sean, that was his 5th movie. And he knew what he was doing, and it's not like a bunch of guys just grabbed the phone and they just got out of film school and they're like, hey, let's go make a movie. It took, you have to know what you're doing. And, it's not like you just grab the phone, like you said, an adapter, the proper app, things like that. So that's the thing that doesn't get explained a lot. And people just say iPhone, Sundance, feature, and that's all they hear. But there is a lot of there's a lot of other stuff that you did to get what you got.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I guess that I just wanted to make the film look as good as it could look, as unique as possible. And shooting those tests really allowed us to find a look, and also you're shooting in Los Angeles. Los Angeles has a certain look. It really does. No matter what anyone says, every place has its own look, and it almost dictates a style. And Los Angeles dictated this orange style on us. It just simply did because of we were shooting a lot of magic hour stuff. We were shooting so we took advantage of that low winter sun. That low winter sun is enhanced by the pollution in the air that gives us these beautiful orange sunsets. And so we just kept shooting that stuff thinking that it would, okay, cool. Are we overdoing it? No, not really. And so, just kept moving forward with that. And it gave us this Tangerine look. And it's part of the reason that we actually settled on the name, on the title Tangerine.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And now how many people were on your crew?
Oh, it was tiny, and it was really just like my my really close team. You had Darren Dean, Shi-Ching Zhou, both of whom I've worked with before.
And they were
Chris Bergosh.
And what were they? What were the
Well, you had those two doing production. They were both producers. Darren, but then Shi-Ching was also costume design and continuity, and she was also acting in it. She also was the woman behind the counter at Donut Time. And so she had to do continuity while acting. Pretty insane. Then you had Chris Bergosh, who was the co-screenwriter, but he's the type of writer who is present on set all the time. I mean, we were rewriting stuff as we were shooting, so it was important to have him there, and he was also doing. We all had to be production assistants. We all had to go and get meals. And then you had Iron Strauss, who was specifically sound, and then Radium Chung and I shot it, and that was literally it. I mean, I'm trying to rack my brain. The actors, of course, were always helpful. You had Karan Karagulian, who played Razmik, coming in and helping us. You had PJ Ransone, or James Ransone, and you had, of course, the girls, Maya, Kiki, and helping us out in terms of navigating through their neighborhood and their world. So that was really it. I mean, and Mark and Jay were incredibly hands-off in terms of executive producers. Marcus and Carrie Cox, who also put money into it, were extremely hands-off.
That's awesome.
It was really it was this sort of it was almost when you're in that mode of almost desperation, where you're like, this one has to get recognized. You're in this weird bubble of you're just like, it almost goes back to, it felt like making some of those VHS films in high school. We were just making it up as we were going along, and just not making it up in terms of the story, but just trying to figure this thing out with the very little money that we had. Part of the, just really quickly, part of the style actually just came from the energy of that area. I mean, you can look at my other work and you can see it's much slower and much, it's not as hyperactive. And this film was, I think, part of it was iPhone and part of it was the energy of the area. It was just telling me to move the camera more and more. And so I had my 10 speed, I don't know if it's a 10 speed, but I had my bicycle on set, and that was sort of the dolly. So I would be on my bike with my left hand on my handlebar and my right hand holding the little stabilizer, which I forgot to mention, by the way. That was the other tool. It was it was the Tiffin smoothie made by Steadicam, and or made by Tiffin, and basically it was this was before there was the internal stabilizer in the iPhone, so it was you needed this in order to shoot on the 5S, and it actually looked really good, and it allowed me to get a lot of different angles and get on my bike and, just go do 360s around my actors and be very free with the camera. So yeah, that's really how it happened.
Now, I know you just recently moved out back to the East Coast, right?
Only to do post-production on my new film.
Okay.
We're here in New York. We're taking advantage of the tax incentive here for post, and my girlfriend Samantha Kwan is actually in a play, Viet Gone, which is part of the Manhattan Theater Club. So it's because we both need to be here at the same time.
So I didn't know if you knew or not that Donut Time is closed.
I did. I always thought, you know what? I'm very upset to hear about that.
Yeah, I drove by it the other day. I was like, whoa, no.
I actually was trying to get the signs, but we could not contact the owners. And then on top of that, if I had all the money in the world, I would definitely make that my production office.
That would be
but it would be the most awesome thing. I know.
Wow. Can you imagine that being because people who don't know that corner, I've driven that corner a million times, and the energy on that corner is pretty insane.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like, it's with Prince of Broadway. I caught the end of an era when the film is about the West African hustlers who sell counterfeit goods in the wholesale district. Well, the wholesale district is really now like the Ace Hotel and like all this gentrified section of the city. They've all moved down to Chinatown. I caught the very last bit of that era. It looks like I did the same thing happen with Tangerine, because that area has completely changed. You have, Donut Time has closed. You have, galleries moving in there. It's it's very different than it used to be. I mean, for 3 decades, it was almost like an unofficial red light district, which was not only focused on, transgender sex workers, but also, gay hustlers and cross dressers. And it was, and that lasted all the way up to maybe like 2 years ago. And then,
And that was it. Now, this is a question I've been dying to ask you. Did you have any shooting permits, or did you just go really the whole thing?
No, we did. Actually, we did. Okay. We had permitted. We permitted for different corners, and we tried to blanket permit up and down Santa Monica. And of course, we permitted it when we were shooting in the interiors of locations. We always had permission. The only thing that we stole was the bus and the subway.
Okay, because it was just too expensive to get the permits.
Yeah, we didn't have insurance would not handle that. So we I guess with these few years later we can admit it that we stole that stuff. Yeah.
Don't be ashamed. It's okay.
But I also always want to emphasize that I can, as an independent filmmaker, there's a responsibility I have to tell other filmmakers, you really have to do what's safe, though. It's about safety.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, especially that's why I was dying to ask you, because you're like, it's one thing to kind of like shoot inside someone's house that's really controlled, and you know not to get a permit maybe. But like on the street, on that corner, or anywhere within a 2-mile radius of that area, I was wondering. I'm like, did they really just run and gun it, or did they actually do it right?
It was a combination. I mean, we didn't let people know we were shooting, so therefore you had a lot of people in which we would have to chase them down after the fact and get their releases, because that's required in the United States.
Of course,
it's not required. It's not required in other countries or some other countries. You know that, right? I mean, you can go to Taiwan, you can go to Korea, and you can shoot on the city street and not have to get anybody's permission because it's a public space. That's the way it should be. But, we have a very litigious, society, and we're all looking to cash, it's just ridiculous to me. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
You're a documentary, then that kind of opens it up a little bit.
Right. But then, of course, we've reached the point where we're blurring the line. You see, I like to say that I make hybrid films, which, blurs the line between narrative and docu. So how do you then say, well, this day I'm shooting in a docu style, so therefore I think I should be allowed to get away with certain things. And you know what I mean? I just faced this with my new film, in which there was this constant. It was a union film. And which changes everything, by the way.
Yeah,
but
I was gonna say,
but when you're shooting and then you see somebody on the street and you're like, that person looks amazing. I wonder whether that person is a character, and you start talking to that person, and if that person is interesting enough, you're like, oh wow, I should just improvise a scene right now with this guy or this girl, and then you do it. But if you're doing it under SAG rules or under union rules, you have to Taft-Hartley that person. You have to suddenly pay before you even turn the camera on And if you agree that you're going to be shooting that person and that person's going to speak, you have to give that person whatever the day rate is, which is like $900. That would be an impossible way to make the films I've made up to this point. Like you simply can't do that. You have to, there should be another way of working in which people can, you almost can test the waters and then agree whether or not if that person makes it into the final cut, then you Taft-Hartley that person. That's the way it should be. There has to be a way now that we've actually moved into a place where we are making these hybrid films. We have to figure out new ways of making them, like the legality of making them and the logistics of making them. That has to change. It really does, because it was incredibly frustrating on my last film, where I was suddenly felt as if I wasn't able to do what I've done before. And the whole reason I'm making this film and have the opportunity to make this film is because of the films I've made before. So suddenly I'm in a place where I'm like, hey, thanks for giving me so much more money, but I can't give you the same product because we are now
you've handcuffed me. You've handcuffed me. Yeah. No, I agree. No, I agree with you 100%. I mean, I just finished doing my first feature. And it was thanks, brother. I appreciate it. And I tell you, we kind of run and gunned it.
Yeah.
You had to. Yeah. There's just no way. There's no way. Like, when you're at a bigger level and you have bigger budgets, yeah, I'm all about it, man. But when you're just hustling from the street level up, literally with Tangerine from the street level up, you kind of just have to have some sort of freedom. And I know the unions are starting to work a little bit more with indie filmmakers, because so many of them are just leaving. They're just like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to go elsewhere to make my movies. And all that runaway production's happening, especially here in LA. But it's just there has to be a balance, man. Like, you can't expect
there has to be.
You can't expect guys like you and me to have to pay the same thing that Avengers does.
Right.
It's just
that's true.
It just doesn't make any sense. But no, which brings up a good point. Did you do any improv in Tangerine, or was it all scripted?
Oh no, there's a ton of improv. There always is. With everything I do, I ask for improv takes. So there will be some scenes will be very tightly scripted, but even if they are, by the second or third take, I'm saying, hey, why don't you put it into your own words? You know what I mean? Like, don't memorize this stuff. As long as we are getting the point across and we're hitting the beats, that's all that matters. It's like, if we get from point A to point B, that's all that really matters. And so yes, there was improvisation.
How much of it made it the final cut, in your opinion, percentage wise? That was improv versus scripted.
Oh God, it's really hard to say, but maybe it's hard to say, because after a while I was intentionally telling them, don't learn this line. But basically what you're saying is that you have to, you're mad at this person because of this reason, so it's giving them the general sense. I have to say though that Kiki and Maya, they delivered some of my favorite. Well, and the entire cast, Mickey O'Hagan, who played, Dinah in the film, they have each one of them has a diamond. Each one of them has gold in some of their improv. Kiki, one of her lines was, she comes from the hills. She's a hillbilly. That was her. That was her. Maya Taylor saying, you know me so well, don't you? That was an improvised line. Or you see right through me, don't you? That line is so important because, critics have picked up on that, and the trans community actually has picked up on that line as it being a very important line for the film, because it's for once, the exchange is being seen through the eyes of the sex worker instead of the customer. And so therefore it's a line like that I just have to say thank you so much to my actors for, because they brought something to the table that elevated the entire film. You know what I mean? The entire experience. So that's why I love improv, and it all goes back to Greg the Bunny. It all goes back to Dan Milano being such a freaking genius, and me being like, how do we capture this genius? How do we work? And so over the years, I've figured out a way of working with my actors where I'm basically part of the conversation. I just cut myself out, so you'll sometimes, like in Starlet, where they're all on the the three of them are on the couch smoking weed and just talking about whatever. I'm sort of like the fourth part of that conversation, but I'm just behind the camera, and I'm sort of like, if I hear something that I think could develop into something into a one-liner or something funny, I'll say, hey, let's go in this direction. And then, can you repeat that line? But this time give me this at the end of that line. Right. So we're basically helping one another figure out the best way of delivering the material. And I think that that's really just like improv is what makes me the most excited, especially because I'm the editor. And editing is so monotonous, and it puts me into a really bad state. But if I can at least trust me.
No, dude,
really bad.
I've been a cutter. I've been a cutter for 25 years. Did I know what you mean?
Oh, okay. So yeah. It's really a lonesome place. So anyway, when you're there though, you want to be excited and you want to be entertained. So when I have like 5 takes and they're all slightly different because of the improv, that keeps me thinking and keeps me awake. It's not just about, does the continuity work on this shot? No, it's about like, where is the best material? And it's actually like rewriting while you're in post-production, because you're given a lot more to write with. You're given like, 5 ingredients instead of the one ingredient being repeated 5 times. You know what I mean? So
no, it's absolutely. I love working with actors who improv and that whole storytelling process. Absolutely. It makes it much more fun and lively. It keeps you awake. Like you said, it does keep you awake, because I've edited movies that are like the same, like 5 takes of the same exact lines being said, just with different infant, like how the face looked or this and that. And that just becomes monotonous. But when you have 5 different takes, and then trying to cut those with other coverage when they're not the same, that's when it becomes even more fun.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
It's very hard.
Very hard. But you know what? You figure it out. And thank God that audiences will accept like jump cuts these days. They'll accept jump cuts, and there's a certain style of filmmaking that leans towards the docu style, which will allow you to get away with a lot of more stuff than you would in just traditional lockdown camera stuff. Even though I do have a lot of lockdown camera, I really do have a lot of lockdown camera in the new film. But I had a lot of lockdown camera. It's just you don't think about it, but I actually do have lockdown camera in Starlet and Tangerine. And these days you can play with you can actually use matting and comping to help you, fix problematic scenes, by splitting the screen in half and using the earlier part of the second take on the right side and using another part of another take on the left side, that sort of thing.
Well, if you have a lockdown camera, you can do that.
Yes, and I've been doing a lot of that stuff. That actually, that opening scene of Tangerine is actually a lot more complicated than just a shot reverse shot. It's actually, there's a lot of that stuff going on in there.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
You just don't see it. You don't see it.
That's the point.
I had to actually, I had to play with the traffic, because the traffic's going in every which direction. If I just, but on that corner, in order for it to work continuity wise, I had to do a lot of that cheating in post.
That's awesome. Now, can you tell me a little bit about your Sundance experience? Because I know a lot of people listening, that is the holy grail. That is the top of the mountain for a lot of filmmakers. Although I know, the reality it isn't, but that is such a notch on the belt. Like, how was your experience going there? Because obviously this is the first time you were there. Sure, you had Jay and Mark's name on the movie, which got you a little bit of attention. But at the end of the day, if the movie is not good, it doesn't really matter. So before the first screening and after the first screening, I'd love to hear your experience, because I know I read that Steven Soderbergh, prior to Sex, Lies, and Videotape in 1989 he literally was sitting alone at that one diner that's on Main Street that everyone has breakfast at, and nobody even knew who the hell he was. And then the second it was there was just just everybody. He was a rock star. He became a rock star all of a sudden.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if that's actually. I mean, listen, I'm neurotic. I'm crazy. So it's like the whole time it was actually not the best experience in the world in terms of, I was just. There's a lot of babysitting going on because, you're looking after your crew and your actors and you're hoping everybody is having a good time and not freezing. And, there's a lot of that, just logistics of going through the week. I actually, you don't want to party too hard either because you have business to do. So a lot of it was just about anticipation of who's going to buy the film and for how much. And then for me, looking back at that time, it is a little bit of a blur, but what I do remember, the most significant part of the whole week for me was being in the room with Magnolia, with Mark, with my agent, and with Josh Braun from Submarine, which is a sales agent agency, just listening to Magnolia give us their pitch about how they would release the film, hearing Mark and the others talk about what we would like, and that was really like, okay, good. I am learning something here. I've been in the industry for over 20 years, but this is fresh to me. I'm learning how a film is acquired. And how the relationship is formed between, even though I've done this before, this was the Sundance one. This was the Sundance experience of it. Yeah. Because, I sold Starlet on a Vimeo link. It showed at South by Southwest, did all right there critically, but Music Box didn't even see it there. They saw it on a Vimeo link. So this was a very different experience. And that was that was the takeaway, where I'm like, this is very interesting to see the way that Mark Duplass works, the way that things are negotiated. That was really great. And so the rest of the time was really just about, doing all that press, which is, it's fine. It's fun. You're getting exposure. And,
it opened up some doors for you, obviously.
It did. It did. It actually, led to me being able to find financiers for the newest film, which is the first time I'm working, above $1 million budget. And it allowed me to, to work with a movie star, Willem Dafoe is an incredible actor.
He's amazing. So tell us about your new project.
It's called the Florida Project. That's what it's literally called. It's not the working title. It's called the Florida Project. And
did you shoot in? I'm assuming you shot in Florida?
I know some people didn't even know that until like the rap party. They're like, "So what are you going to call this?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? It's called the Florida Project."
Did you shoot in Florida?
Yes, we did.
Where did you shoot? Yeah. Where'd you shoot?
Okay. Well, here's the crazy and very sad part. We started shooting less than a week after the shooting at Pulse, the club. We were shooting in Orlando and Kissimmee. Yeah. And so we had that going on that week. We had the little kid who was unfortunately killed by the alligator at Disney. Yeah, that other shooting. I mean, it was a very strange summer there. It was a very, and then they just got hit by the hurricane last week. So it's such a... that area has not had a break.
This is why I left. I mean, it was a rough. A lot of stuff happens in Florida, unfortunately.
Yeah, Florida really is. I mean, I looking back, it was like a trauma for us. I mean, it was a very traumatic experience. I mean, but we were shooting. We also put ourselves in that situation. We put ourselves in the dead, in the middle of an incredibly hot summer in the middle of Central Florida, right?
Oh my God! You must have lost like 100 pounds.
Yeah. We were shooting 35 millimeter. We were using primarily kids because it's like a Little Rascals movie. So you have like kids, 35 millimeter, sun, and then plus all the other craziness going on. It was, we just like set ourselves up for just an incredibly hard shoot. But in the end, I think we got something. I'm in post-production now, so we'll see. I mean, I know that the performances are incredible. I mean, I really am very happy with my cast.
Now, how did you work? Like, and this is a director to director. How would you direct William Dafoe? Like, how do you do that? How is that conversation happen?
Well, he is, most of the time, just letting him do what he does best. Just he brings his masterful instincts to the table. So he 99% of the time we're on the same page, where he understands the character, he understands the scene, and it's more about just tweaking. And when there was something that I thought we weren't on the same page about, it's simply a conversation. And the great thing about Willem is that he's such a nice guy. He's like the nicest guy in the whole world. So of course I was intimidated, but it wasn't that much intimidation. And plus, on top of that, it was just such an incredible, as I said, incredibly hard shoot that there wasn't a lot of time. It was like, we got to get this right now. So let's just figure it out. And we just all would figure it out and move on. He was just, he just an incredibly nice guy who was very easy to work with and who wanted us to experiment, He almost, I bet he almost wished we shot it on the iPhone so there was more experimentation. But, we were shooting on 35 where suddenly like, you're almost down to 2 setups an hour when you have,
it's a beast. No, 35's a beast. Yeah.
When you have an iPhone, which is 100 setups an hour, if you want it to be. So it's a very different way of making a film.
Why did you choose 35, by the way?
Because, ultimately I feel it's a project by project. It's on a project by project basis. For this film, I felt because of the subject matter, and because of the environment, that I really wanted that celluloid look. I mean, I love the way that Tangerine looks on the iPhone. I feel that there's no other way we could have made that movie for that budget. And even if we had a multi-millions to make Tangerine, I still, feel as if the iPhone was the proper way of doing it, but that doesn't apply to Florida Project. Florida Project needed a slicker look. I truly feel as if, the organic nature of celluloid is so incredibly beautiful. And that I wanted to capture that. I wanted to capture the Floridian colors, et cetera, et cetera. Plus, on top of that, there is another thing that I think a lot of filmmakers aren't talking about, and we really should be talking about this stuff more like the way that Nolan does and Tarantino, is that we have to hold on to this medium. We're letting business tell us how to make our art. We're having the industry say, oh, it's easier and cheaper to shoot on digital, so therefore guys do that. Well, that's horrible. I mean, that's not, we're filmmakers. First and foremost, we should choose our canvas. You know what I mean? This is not, we shouldn't have it dictated upon us. And I think that, we cannot lose celluloid. I mean, if we should have that choice to shoot on it if we want to, and if we have the money to do it. And I think that we have to fight to do that. And there are filmmakers out there like, James Ponsold and Ty West, who are saying, look, I'm shooting on 35, or I'm not making the movie. And that's how I'm starting to go, where it's like, there will be reasons for me to shoot digitally. But if I can shoot on 35, I'm going to, because ultimately the image is an incredible image that you really cannot, no matter what anyone says, you cannot imitate with digital. Not yet. You can't. And
not really. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, that's one of the reasons. And then also there's that archival thing that nobody's talking about either, that, even if you shoot digitally, I feel as if you should do a film out. Now you can say, well, where will I find the $50,000? I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to find $50,000 to do a film out on Takeout, because I feel that Takeout is a film that deserves it. And it would look the way we really wanted it to look if I was able to do a film out. But film out costs, so much money. So,
Right.
it's this weird sort of, this is just a dilemma that we've always been having to face, that we're working with the most expensive art form, which,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Trust me, I know. I wish we could just grab a piece of paper and a pen and draw something, or write a song, or play an instrument, and you're good. But no, we've picked pretty much the most expensive form of artwork, maybe other than an architect.
Yeah, exactly.
So last two questions. I asked all my guests the same two questions. What is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in life or in the film business?
The longest to learn. Well, oh God, that's a hard one. Because see, one of the lessons that that's a hard one. One of the lessons that I learned early on, but I'm still having to always remind myself is just to do it, just to be proactive, and don't wait for anybody to tell you when or when not to do something. I think that that's the lesson that even to this day, I have to remind myself that that's how I got to make my last couple of films, because I made those first three on my own. Mm-hmm. Even when people told me, "Oh, you should wait until you get a backer," or you should wait until until you're working. Yeah. And I didn't wait, and because I didn't wait, it's because and that's why I'm able to finally make somewhat of a living in this industry. So I would say that's a lesson that that you're always going to be people are going to try to pressure you out of it. So that's a lesson you constantly have to, keep relearning and keep, being on top of, is that, you just really have to be your own motivator and really your own cheerleader.
No question about it. I couldn't agree with you more, my friend. It's who is I forgot. One of my guests said this, that no, it was actually Robert Rodriguez. I was listening to an interview he did, or a lecture he did, and he says that karma, the universe conspires to help you once you become active. Thinking about it and sitting down, you can't. There's no opportunity for the universe to give you anything. Like, it's not going to, Mark Duplass is not going to knock on your door and go, here's the money, let's go to Sundance. It doesn't work that way. Like, you have to get that momentum going and just do. Whether it's good or bad, that's indifferent. Just do, because something good will come out of it.
Exactly.
And what are the three of your favorite films of all time? In no particular order.
Oh, gosh. This is funny because I get asked that a lot, and it's always, the list always changes. Sure. So I realize that, it just happens to be in October of 2016. I guess the films that mean the most to me right now are, I would say, Lars von Trier's The Idiots. Mm-hmm. That really hasn't changed, actually, for quite a long time, because, I consider it extremely. See, that's where, when people say, well, wait a minute, you're talking so passionately about 35 millimeter, but that film is a standard definition video film. It's that's where I'm also at the same time always have to remind myself that ultimately it is not about, the format. It's about the content. That's story. Something that's a lesson that probably I'll never learn. So, but anyway, so there's that film. And then I would say, March of the Wooden Soldiers, the Laurel and Hardy, comedy from back in the day. Which is also Babes in Toyland. I love that film so much, and I consider that comedy one of the, it's hardly aged at all. It's almost 100 years old. And oh my gosh, oh God, it is so hard. I can't believe. I would have to say Harold and Maude.
Oh yeah, that's been on the list on many of my guests. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to deny it. So
Yeah, Harold and Maude is an awesome, awesome movie. Now
it is.
where can people find you online?
I am. I'm on Twitter at Let me see what my handle is. I think it's at Lil Film. It's L.
I'll put the link in the show notes, so don't worry about that. But you're on Twitter.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. Yeah, and I have just a one of those professional pages on Facebook if you want to find me there.
Okay.
But most of my stuff that I get out there is through Twitter, and it's really just a lot of like. It's pretty geeky. It's just me talking about like what Blu-rays I've watched recently.
Yeah.
But
well, that's how we met. We met on Twitter as well. So
okay,
it works.
there you go.
Yeah, it does work. You know, you're I'm still I never am shocked at who I can connect with on Twitter. It's fascinating. I've gotten so many amazing guests and talked to people and just connected with people that it was Twitter. It's just through a tweet.
I actually think that social networking and just the internet in general is such an amazing new way of working. Also, if you can figure out a way of using it, exploiting it to as much as you can in film. I cast my new film. Well, I did a lot of casting with Tangerine. Through things like Instagram and Twitter and this and that, but the new film, Florida Project, has one of the leads who I cast through Instagram.
That's insane.
Yeah,
but it's true.
And
but it's great.
Yeah, she never acted before, but I knew her personality was incredibly interesting, and she had the right look, and she was funny. And next thing you know, she's holding her own against Willem Dafoe.
And that's crazy. That's the way the world works, my friend. That's the way the world works.
Yeah,
Sean, man, thank you so much for taking out your time of your busy schedule. I know you're in post right now, so thank you for jumping on the show and dropping some knowledge bombs, man.
Oh, thank you so much.
And there you have it, guys. I told you, Sean was awesome. I was so happy to have him on the show because I was dying to ask him a whole bunch of questions about how he shot this thing. And I think we got into it pretty deep. Into how he made Tangerine. I'm excited about his new movie as well. And if you want any of the show notes, head over to indiefilmhustle.com/111. And in there, you'll also have a complete explanation of all the gear he used, iPhone filmmaking stuff, and all sorts of cool stuff. So definitely check out the show notes on that one at indiefilmhustle.com/111. Don't forget to head over to freefilmmakingpodcast.com and leave us an honest review of the show. It really, really helps us out a lot, guys. I know you're busy. I know you're right now, but right now, listen, if you're on a commute right now, you're in a train somewhere, or you're sitting around waiting, listening to this at a coffee shop, just take a second. Go over to your iTunes. Leave us a review. Leave us a good review. It really helps me out a lot, man. I really, really, really appreciate it. And don't forget to head over to freefilmbook.com. That's freefilmbook.com and download your free filmmaking audiobook from Audible. And that helps support the show and keeps us going, my friend. So thank you again so much. I've got a lot of cool stuff coming up for the holidays. Got some new stuff I'm cooking up. And I'll give you updates on This Is Meg as I get them. So, oh, and by the way, I'm going to be heading over to AFM next week. I'm going to be there on Monday. And I'm going to be checking things out over at AFM. I've never been to AFM, so I'm really curious about AFM and see what all the hoopla is about. So I'm going to be checking that out. And then I am going to also be at Sundance this year, guys. I'm going to make that announcement now. I am planning to be at Sundance, regardless if Meg gets into Sundance or Slamdance this year. I am going to be heading over there, and I'm going to be doing some live podcasting. I'm going to be doing some pictures, videos, streaming, the whole ball of wax while I'm there. So keep an eye out for all of that stuff, and you'll be able to see the Sundance experience through the indie film hustle lens, which is what I hopefully will be with Meg in one way, shape, or form. That would be awesome. But either way, I'm going to go over there, and I haven't been there in close to a decade. So I can't wait to go there and share all that stuff with you guys as well. So thanks again, guys, and keep that hustle going, keep that dream alive, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.